Well, hey guys, welcome into the very first episode of First Base. I'm your host, Taylor Mathis, and you guys are here to team up with me. This has been a project I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but I've put it on the back burner for a while. And First Base is going to be all about getting to first base, getting to know somebody, myself, along with athletes that I'm gonna have on throughout the way. I've got a great lineup of guests, and we're gonna dive deep into not just them as athletes and what they do out there on the field or the court. We're gonna get to know them as people, what they like to do outside of their sport. It's gonna be fun, it's gonna be a good time. For the first episode though, I'm gonna let you guys get to know me a little bit more. You're gonna team up with me, we're gonna go to first base together. Most of you guys really only know me from an angle of sports and sports betting and giving my analysis and prop plays. I wanna tell you guys a little bit more about me, my story of how I got into the industry and who I am as a person outside of the sports world as well. So let's head to first base, baby.
Team up with me. Let's make our way down to first base.
I figured I would kind of explain to you guys my story of really how I grew up and like where I come from. I'm from a really small town in Illinois called Sandwich, Illinois, in the absolute middle of nowhere. And I really grew up with a very close-knit family. I've got one younger sister and my two parents, and I was really not allowed to be on the internet whatsoever. And it's kind of funny to think about that now because my entire career and what I've built for myself has all had to do with the internet and social media. For myself growing up, my parents were so strict about our internet usage. And I'm gonna date myself and age myself a lot by telling you guys this, but I had dial-up internet, we had AOL, the whole shebang. And my parents monitored how many minutes a day my sister and I were allowed to even use the internet. We had 30 minutes a day. We were not allowed to have social media, so I did not have MySpace, and I didn't even have my first Facebook page until I was a sophomore in high school. So I wasn't really up with the times. I didn't spend a lot of time on the internet. I grew up in the age of the internet era, but I didn't necessarily grow up being savvy with social media and understanding how to use it to build my brand or myself. When I was younger, I was actually really nerdy. I spent most of my time doing theater. I sang a lot. I was a competitive cheerleader, and I spent a lot of time on my academics. I was valedictorian in high school. All I really cared about was school, and I wanted to get a scholarship to go to the University of Iowa and pursue broadcast journalism. So I always knew that was kind of exactly what I wanted to do, and I've always stayed within that space. But if you were gonna be catching me on the internet back then, if I was on the computer, I was gonna be playing Sims or probably listening to music and downloading stuff off of LimeWire. When I got to the University of Iowa, went through school, and my journey really started with getting into the broadcast space my sophomore year of college. I got my first internship at CBS Radio in downtown Chicago, and I was working with their station specifically called K-Hits, and it was 70s, 80s, and 90s music. And what I did was, as an intern, also I'm gonna throw this out there, I grinded. I made no money. It was unpaid internship, which I know a lot of internships are unpaid, especially in the broadcast space, but I made no money, and I traveled every day. I got up at 4 a.m., got ready, drove from my house in Sandwich to the train station in Elburn. Then I took the train from Elburn to the city, then I walked to the L, and then I took the L to CBS Radio. So I had a whole journey before I even got to my internship every single day. What I got to do there was really cool though, and I was hitting the ground running pretty much within the space. I would go to different concerts along with the K-Hits team. We were basically the team that was going to promote K-Hits as a station, and we were there at all these different concerts. I got to see Taylor Swift open for the Rolling Stones at the United Center, which was absolutely insane. But then I got to do a lot of smaller things too. We went to a lot of the suburbs of Chicago, and we did like music in the park type of events or fairs. So it was a whole different variety of things that I went and got to do, but that was really my first taste of working within broadcasting. And social media did not exist really at this point. There was Twitter, but Instagram still wasn't even a thing. I was just working my way up with an internship in the broadcast space. Junior year is when I really started to take a dive into building my brand through social media and working within the sports media space. Living in my sorority house, and I got the call that I was chosen as one of 8 people for an internship with BC Sports Chicago. And I knew that it was like my dream internship. I wanted this more than anything. I was going to be covering the Cubs, the White Sox, the Bulls, the Blackhawks, the Bears. I was like, this is so up my wheelhouse and exactly what I want to be doing. And Instagram really started to pick up at that point, and people in college were using it, and this was the day and age of total frat move girls and barstool smoke show of the day. And that's actually how I started to get my first bit of a following, was I was a barstool smoke show of the day back in college. And I remember waking up and my whole sorority house was like, Taylor, you're the barstool smoke show of the day. And I started getting all these Instagram followers, and I was like, what is going on? Like, what is this about? I don't really know what this is. I guess I got it because people thought I was cute. So I was the smoke show of the day, and I grew a very tiny Instagram following. At that point, I think I had like 2,000-3,000 followers. But for then, that was a lot back on Instagram when it just started. I get my internship that summer. I'm in Chicago, having the best time ever. And I really started to think to myself, I should be using Instagram to build my brand and showcase who I am within the sports world. And that is when Shy Sports Chick was born. And if you've been with me through the days of Shy Sports Chick, you have been there with me through it all. I started on Instagram as Shy Sports Chick, and that's what a lot of people knew me as. If you're watching the video version of this, I'm gonna show what my first ever picture was that I uploaded to Instagram. And I basically introduced myself. I was like, hi, I'm Taylor. I'm Shy Sports Chick. Chicago sports are my thing. I'm an intern at NBC Sports Chicago. And I'm gonna use social media to build my brand and show you guys who I am and my love for Chicago sports. And at the time, you couldn't even do video, so I would upload stagnant pictures of like the Chicago Cubs, and I would show the Cubs and give the score and the highlights of the day and what happened during the games. Or I would show the Bulls and be like, this is the trade that happened and here's what's going on. So I started on the very basic realm of Instagram, but I was very good about understanding what I needed to do at that time with the algorithm of Instagram to build my social media following. And at that time, hashtags were everything. So I hashtagged the shit out of everything that I did. I started really building my name as a Chicago sports personality while I was still in college. And that brand really started to grow. I believe by the end of my college career, I had built it up to about 10,000 followers, which again, at the time, that felt gigantic to me. After I graduated from the University of Iowa, I got my first job and I moved to the beautiful state of Nebraska. And I know that I've got a lot of people that have also been following my journey since then. All my Huskers out there, I've got to give them a shout out, because the state of Nebraska, living there per se, wasn't necessarily my favorite, but the people there were such great people, and they made my experience what it was while I was there. I started out at NTV in Kearney, Nebraska. I made $9 an hour, and I worked my ass off while I was there. I carried the camera around, I carried the lights, I interviewed, I shot, I edited, I drove all over the state of Nebraska to get high school football highlights, women's volleyball, which if you've never watched Nebraska women's volleyball, like, you need to do it, because it made me such a huge volleyball fan. The state of Nebraska takes volleyball extremely seriously, and it's really fun to watch at a competitive level like that. I covered high school rodeo while I was there. I knew absolutely nothing about rodeo, but I was there with a smile on my face, that big gigantic camera on my shoulder, shooting, the bull riding, goat tying, doing all of that. And then I'd go back to the station, I edited, wrote my own stories, did interviews, the whole 9 yards, while making barely any money. And I don't want to say miserable. It definitely wasn't my favorite place. It wasn't my favorite job. And I had a tough time while I was there. But the people of Nebraska definitely made it worth it. I met so many amazing people and so many fun athletes of all age ranges, really, while I was there. And social media wise, I started to grow more of a presence because I was one of 2 girls in the entire state of Nebraska that was covering sports. So I became kind of known as that little blonde girl that was running around with the big gigantic camera.
And I've got to say, my favorite sports memory, though, ever, y'all, while I was working in Nebraska, is when I saw Iowa go undefeated in the regular season in 2015, because I went to the University of Iowa, but I got to cover the game for the Huskers. So secretly, it was freezing that day, too. I'm down on the field, ice cold. I had little warmers in my hands, and I'm covering that game, and I'm not supposed to cheer as media, but under my breath every time I was like, yeah, yeah. I was so excited that the Hawkeyes went undefeated. So unfortunately, my favorite sports memory has to do with my team and not really the Huskers. But it was a great time. And while I was at NTV, like I said, social media was blowing up more and more. And I started to blow up more and more because I was covering the Huskers, and I kind of became known as the girl in the state of Nebraska covering the Huskers. And we might have to do a whole separate episode where I go more in depth about that, because I have wild, crazy stories from when I worked at NTV. After I was at NTV, I decided to make the move home back to Chicago, and I lived with my parents for a little bit, and I was working for this brand called Sports Mockery, and it was all Chicago sports digitally. And I worked my butt off while I was there too. And my parents, shout out to them, they're here too. I love them so much, and they are the most supportive parents ever. They did everything to help me. My mom and I kept growing my social media brand by having me do little stand-ups at home. We made like our own poster background, like in my bedroom, and my mom would come up and film me, and I would give like sports highlights of the day for Chicago sports. My dad would build these extravagant setups for me to record and do these different pieces while I was able to work at home. Still working in the sports world, not making barely any money, and deciding what I was going to do. And I was sending my resume reel out to a million different places, deciding if I wanted to stay in local TV. Maybe I wanted to get out of sports. I really wasn't sure. At that time, I made the wonderful move to Arizona. And boy, oh boy, I think a lot of girls can say this. Maybe just a lot of people in general can say this. But I made the move for a boy at the time. I made the move for a man to be out here with him and to live with him. And at the time, it seemed like the right choice. And we had been doing distance for a while, and I wanted to be out here with him. And I made the move to Arizona, and I decided to get out of sports. And I started working in sales for a brief period of about 3 months. Didn't last very long. And then I made my way into working for a law firm, and I was doing social media for the law firm in a business setting instead of really doing it for myself. In the sports world, I just totally said goodbye to the sports world for a while and focused on being in a different area. I learned a ton about estate planning, LLCs. That was an interesting time for me because I didn't really know if I ever wanted to get back in sports or if I was okay with working that normal 9 to 5. And I was really happy with working the 9 to 5 because I was living with my boyfriend at the time. We had our great life out here in Arizona, and I was just having fun. I was trying to make friends. I was having my time in my early 20s, like going out in Old Town, getting to know the area. I'm going to give you guys a tip. If you've never been to Arizona, you have to go to Scottsdale, and you've got to experience the Vortex at least once in your life. It's the Horseshoe Bend Road area where all the bars and clubs line up. Bottle Blonde's in there, Bevy, Riot House, bunch of different places, but it's an experience to see. They call it mini Vegas, and living in this area, it's hard when you're in that age to not want to go out and have fun and do that kind of stuff. And I was working at just a basic 9 to 5. So my weekends consisted of me having fun, and I really put sports on the back burner for quite some time. And I would say social media for myself at that point on the back burner too. It was really more about my job working social media in a business setting. So I've experienced social media through so many different realms. In my personal life at that time, like I said, I was dating my boyfriend. We had been together for about, I guess, 2.5 years. And one of my favorite things to do, besides going out, hanging out with friends and meeting new people, was that for my birthday present one year, he finally let me get a dog.
All right, come on. Come on, Neon. This is Kook. This is the man in my life, my little pride and joy. And I'm gonna talk about him a little bit because he doesn't get much camera time on the social channels and people don't know about him. But this is Kookle Khan, AKA Kook. And like I said, going to my ex-boyfriend for a hot little minute. He was so adamant on me not being able to get a dog. And I really wanted one when I moved to Arizona because I needed somebody. I moved super far away from my family. I didn't know anybody out here, and I really only had him. And I was like, I I want a dog. I begged forever to get a dog, and he was so against it. Finally, for my birthday one year, he told me I could pick out any dog I wanted. And here's how the story goes of how I got this little man, Nanny Tanner. I started looking as soon as my ex told me that I could get a dog immediately online. I stayed up all night. I was searching all the rescue websites and looking for where I could get dogs, and I'm just going through picture after picture of all these dogs. And I come across this picture of this little man on a rescue website out here in Arizona. And something about his face, I was like, I have to go meet that dog. I was up till like 6 a.m. looking at dogs too. I go to work the next day, and after work, I asked one of my coworkers, I was like, hey, do you want to go look at this dog with me at this rescue in downtown Phoenix? And she was like, yeah, I'll go with you. And I was like, he's so cute. And I'm not really even a small dog person normally. I grew up with like big dogs and golden retrievers. There's something about his little face. So we go to the rescue. I hold him, and I was like, this is it. This is my dog. Like, I want this dog. So I call my ex, and my ex is like, well, I want to meet the dog first before you get it. And I was like, okay, great. Come to this area. The lady then tells me, well, we're about to close in 10 minutes. There was no way he was going to get there at the time. I was like, can you hold the dog for me till tomorrow? She was like, no, we can't. She wasn't very nice, honestly. She was like, no, we can't hold the dog for you. He's part of a puppy fair that we're going to that's 3 hours away. So I'm like, oh my God, I have to have this dog. Like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, where's the puppy fair? She tells me where it's at. I was like, I will be there an hour before that puppy fair starts. So when you set his cage down, I will be grabbing him and he will be mine. And that is exactly what happened. Convinced my ex to drive to that area, and we were up there. And we got Kook.
As soon as that kennel hit the ground, I grabbed him out of that kennel. I was like, hey, this is Kook. You met him. He's perfect. We're taking him home. And he has been my main man ever since. And this dog has been with me through literally everything. He's 6 now at this point. And I like to say that he is me reincarnated into a dog because he's a little odd, a little quirky, just like I am.
He's got some severe anxiety issues. He doesn't walk on hardwood floors, which is super interesting. People don't understand that about him, but like, he will not walk on hardwood floors. And if he does, he army crawls along the edges of walls. That's how he walks. And if he's more than, I don't know, 5 feet away from me, he'll start crying. Like, he's been sitting over here in my mom's arms behind the camera and crying the entire time so that he could just get here to come next to me and be by me. So he's got a lot of anxiety, but he's also just the biggest sweetheart, and everybody just loves him. I know he's a Chihuahua and people hate on Chihuahuas, but like, there's something special about little Nan. Kook's kind of been the main man in my life through all of that while I went through being in my non-sports era too. He was by my side the entire time. While I was out here in Arizona, the ex and I break up, and I get an opportunity to start doing some sideline reporting for the Suns, and I got to cover the Diamondbacks as well while I was out here, and that was my first taste of really getting into pro sports. I was here in the era where the Suns were like the worst team in the NBA, covering them, and Devin Booker was really our only hope to get anywhere in the league. But it was so fun because I got to get my first taste of really interviewing major athletes and being on the ground floor. I was here and covered the NLCS when the Diamondbacks played the Dodgers. Granted, they lost in that series, but it was very cool that I got to experience that firsthand and cover my first big major playoff baseball too. Like, not a lot of people can say that they got to do that, and I got to do that at the age of 25, 26. I started doing some sideline reporting. Things were going great, and I was getting back into that sports realm. Ta-da! COVID happened, and I got laid off from my job, and I went through a period of really trying to figure out where I was going and what I was doing and what my next steps were going to be, like many people were at that time. And Nan and I were hanging out a lot, doing next to nothing. And I got approached by a smaller betting company called Bet Karma. A lot of people don't know this, but I knew absolutely nothing about betting at the time. They approached me and said that they were looking for a female to do on-camera work for their company digitally, giving picks in conjunction with Underdog Fantasy and Prize Picks, and both those companies were just starting out at the time. So I was like kind of on the ground floor, getting to give picks in relation to both of these companies. But I explained to them at Bet Karma, I was like, I don't know anything about betting. And they were like, that is okay. We like your personality. We like who you are, and we want to teach you. And I gotta credit Bet Karma for so much of getting me into the betting world, because they taught me everything I know about betting. We started at ground zero. I didn't even know what a spread was at the time. They really started going with me through the main sports, explaining to me what a spread is, explaining to me, you know, money lines, over-unders, and how the whole world of sports betting worked. And as time went on, I started to realize, yes, it was fun to bet money line, and yeah, it was fun to look at the spreads and do all of that, but I've always been someone in relation to sports and really how I got into sports, which maybe I should backtrack a little bit on how I got into sports. Baseball was really my first true love in getting into the sports world because I did not play sports growing up. My papa was really the one that got me into sports. He's a gigantic sports nut, one of the biggest I've ever seen. Also, he's a big betting nerd as well. He still writes every day. He has napkins he sits with in his living room, and he calls up the bookie. He has his plays. He writes everything down. He looks at stats daily, and he's been like this since I was little. He took me to my first Cubs game when I was 5, and there was something about being at that baseball game that was so magical to me. And at first it was just really cool because they took us, me, my sister, and my cousin early to try to get autographs of the Cubs players, as one does as a little kid. But he really sat with me, and I think he thought my cousin, who was the boy, was going to be the one that was more into it, but I took a liking to really understanding the game of baseball, and he sat with me and taught me how to do a scorecard. And I don't think that people realize, too, that oddly, numbers are sort of fascinating to me, and maybe that makes sense with being in the betting industry, but I found doing a scorecard very interesting. I liked the tediousness of paying attention to the game and writing each play of what happened. And I did a lot of that too in my interning days, a lot of logging tape that consisted of a lot of numbers and learning plays in different types of sports as well. So it's kind of always been a little bit of a part of me. He really taught me how to do the scorecard. And after that game, you know, most kids maybe would have just done that one and done and been done. Not me. I became obsessed with the Cubs, and I had their schedule on the back of my door. I would write the stats on the back of my door. I would read and watch every game at home, and I would do scorecards at home by myself. So baseball was really how I got into the sports world, but never that betting piece until Bet Karma. I realized, though, one pull that I have very much to sports is I love to talk to people. I love to talk in general, as you can see right now. And I have always loved the part of interviewing and talking to athletes. So when it comes to a betting perspective, one thing that I loved was focusing on certain players, and that's what I've become known for, is player props. And what I'm good at in the betting space is prop betting. The whole love of why I also want to have athletes on first base here is because I want to get to know athletes on a deeper level and reintroduce myself to that interview piece that I haven't had in quite some time with just being in the betting space, because I still love the players. Like, I love the player props. I want to get to know the players better too and go to first base with them. That pretty much brings you guys up to speed with how I got into the betting industry. It went Bet Karma. Then my next goal after that was to get with a sports book, and I ended up at Superbook out of Vegas, the largest physical sports book that exists in Vegas, and I got to do so many cool things there, like covering March Madness for my first time in Vegas, as well as Super Bowl, Suns games, bowl games. I got to do so many cool different events while I was with Superbook, and I learned a lot about the betting industry and got even more immersed, and it just started to take a chokehold on me. Ended up at Sports Grid, and from there, I really built myself as an analyst, somebody that specifically focuses on betting, of course, really gets in and dives deep into player props. And y'all know me for what I really do in the NBA, the MLB, and the NFL. Which brings us up to speed with where I'm at now. So I thought I would tell you guys just a little bit about what I do outside of sports in my day-to-day. One of those things that I've been a fitness freak since forever. Growing up, I did competitive cheer, so that pretty much just always really kept me in shape. Then after that, I went through a phase where I was super into weightlifting, and I had a personal trainer, and I lifted every day. Then I was really into spin for a while, and I would go to spin classes, but my new obsession is core power sculpt yoga. And if you have not tried it, if you are a male or female listening, this is a free endorsement for core power. Like, you need to go. It's the best workout you're ever gonna have. It's a mixture of doing yoga. You start slow, you know, we're doing a little warrior 2, reverse warrior, pull, pivot, plant. that's where it gets interesting. You pull, pivot, plant, and that's when the weights come in. With the rest of the entire workout, you do weightlifting. So it's a mixture of a bunch of different weightlifting. We do some biceps, you do triceps, you do legs, squats, all that fun stuff. And then there's a cardio section, then more weightlifting. And then towards the end, it goes back to a yoga flow. So you get a little bit of everything in Yoga Sculpted Core Power, and it is my obsession right now. I try to go in the mornings with Soph. Like I was saying, Soph is my personal assistant, producer of this, and one of my best friends. And she was with me almost every morning. We try to go at 6 a.m. if we can get our butts up. If we can't, we'll go to later classes. And we've been getting so good now that we're even going on the weekends. That's how obsessed we are. So if you haven't tried Core Power, fitness is a big thing in my life outside of sports. I've already talked a little bit, of course, this little man over here, Nanny Tanner, is also a big part of my life. And I thought I would tell you guys a little bit. I absolutely love to read. I'm a huge reader, I always have been, and maybe that just goes back to my nerdy ways of being in high school, valedictorian. I was a total dork. I didn't really have a lot of friends, so a lot of the time in high school when people were like going out to parties and doing things on weekends, I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I was either working on schoolwork or reading most of the time. But I'm a big thrillers reader. If you can give me a thriller, I'm all about it. Something to learn about me. And that's thrillers not just with books, but with TV also. Give me a thriller show or movie and I'm in. Don't tell me to watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Office, stuff like that. I've never been one that's super into comedy. I love a good thriller. Give me a murder mystery. Give me something that's gonna get the juices flowing up in my head, get me thinking. I'm trying to figure out which path the story's going. That's what I like. I like a little bit of mystery, if you would say. I don't like to just, I love to laugh. I'm a giggler. I'm a giggly girl, but I don't love, I just don't love dumb humor. I'm a chatty Cathy. I'm a chatty Taylor. A talkative T, as we like to say around here. I'm a talkative T. And with that, I've got a lot of great friends. I really do. I built a great base of supportive friends out here in Arizona, and I hang out with them as much as I possibly can. And I really love to travel with my girlfriends a lot too. So traveling's a big thing for me. I have an exciting trip upcoming this summer. I'm going to Spain with my family. My most recent trip that I went on was Nashville with 3 of my girlfriends, and I love Nashville. Nashville is like one of my favorite spots. I could see myself living in Nashville, honestly, because I love country music. I love live music. I love anything to do with music, and I just love the vibe of Nashville. It's like a big city, but not at the same time. It feels small, and it feels very safe to me. I thought I'd give you guys a quick little travel story while we're here. This might get a little morbid, this might get a little weird, but I'm gonna explain it. So, the last time I was in Nashville, before I went on this girls trip, I went with my family. It was my cousin's 21st birthday. We all went together, we rented an Airbnb, and we decided to rent one of those buses where we go around Nashville and they take you to different bars and you drink. And this is awesome. My family, my mom's side of the family, we were all there together. There was probably like, I don't know, 12 to 15 of us. It was a pretty big group of us, and we get to this bar, and it drops us off, and it's a moonshine tasting place, and we go and we're inside and we're like drinking moonshine, and all of a sudden, I swear, pandemonium breaks out. People are running everywhere, whoa, screaming, going, everything's going all over the place, and my mom like grabs my sister and I, and she's like, run, we're running, but we didn't know what we were running for. We didn't know what we were running from. We didn't know what was going on. Next thing we know, we get outside, we're standing on the sidewalk, we look, and there is blood everywhere. They rush us, they're pushing us all to get back, get on the bus, get on the bus. Police are everywhere, ambulances, things are going crazy, noises, sounds, people. And apparently, a homeless man stabbed another homeless man while he was driving past on a bird scooter. That literally happened while we were in Nashville. Now, I know that might be not a very like woohoo great story, but it was still a crazy story. I guess the reason he did it is because the night before he stole something out of his tent. We followed up on the story, my family and I. Like, we kept track with what happened in the news with these 2 men and this stabbing story. But it was wild, and we were a part of the whole thing while we did this bus tour. So I thought I would throw that in and tell you guys a little Nashville story, even though it's not exactly fun. It was weird, to say the least. All right, we're getting close to closing out the first episode of First Base, and hopefully you guys feel like you got First Base with me today. We're gonna do a little segment at the end of each episode, and I'll do this with guests as well. It's gonna be called Taylor's Topics. And it's basically gonna be the things for the week or the month that are in right now for that athlete, or for this episode and throughout each episode, I'll give a couple of my ins as well. So Taylor's topics here for episode 1. And some of these are going to be sports related and some of them are not. We're going to start with the sports related one. And I've got to say, number 1 is going to be the sports of golf and tennis. And here is why. First of all, I've become way more interested in golf and tennis recently. Tennis, I never understood until I recently went to this tennis tournament, how exciting that sport is. I love that it's individual, one-on-one. Obviously you can do doubles, but I was watching one-on-one and how intense it is. These guys are like, every time they are using that racket, it is like a whole full breath of the noises that come out of these athletes is absolutely insane to me. And golf, I feel the same way. Maybe it's just because the Masters passed and everything, and this is like the second year that I've actually paid attention to the Masters. I've always known the sport of golf. I've never played either of these sports either, mind you. But I find them both really interesting, how competitive they are. I love that they're very individual. And there's something about what pop culture and society is doing right now with both of these sports. You see it with Netflix making the series Full Swing that kind of talks about the golf world. You're seeing it in the tennis world, not only for men, but for women. There are so many female influencers like Morgan and Paige Lawrence who have boyfriends that are on the tour right now. And they're making tennis more accessible through fashion, through influencing, through making it fun to go to these events for not only men who might be already into the sports, but for women to get it from a different perspective, to get them into the sports and to get them to see it from kind of a lifestyle perspective. I feel like society, pop culture, and myself right now, I'm all in on golf and tennis. Taylor's topic number 2, changing phone backgrounds. And this is something I just started in 2024 and it like makes me happy. So I'm encouraging everybody else to do it. I'm doing it by month. So what I did at the start of the year was I was like, each month, I'm going to do a different phone background and I'm going to create it myself, and I want it to be something fun and interesting that has to do with the month. And for me, it's been like a creative outlet for myself to do at the beginning of each month, and it's just really fun to switch it up and see something different on my phone. But I thought of different ways that other people can incorporate it. Like you could switch it to a different picture every month of something that you're grateful for if you wanted to do it like something like that, or you could switch it to a different goal that you have for each month, or maybe a quote. I just think that changing the phone backgrounds needs to like be a part of everybody's monthly or maybe weekly activity, however often you want to do it. But I'm really into changing my phone backgrounds right now. And I'll show you guys like a little picture of what I've got going on right now. It's a little artsy fartsy spring vibes going on for April, and I'm super into it. Taylor's topic number 3 is gua shaing. A little gua sha. If you don't know what a gua sha is and you're listening as boys, or maybe you don't know as a female either, it's this little face tool that you use to help your lymphatic drainage. I've been doing it for about 6 months every single night, and this tool's only $5 on Amazon, people. And you open up your lymphatic drainage. So this is what you're gonna do if you're watching the video. You open up your lymph nodes here. So we go along our neck, our ears, our eyes, and our nose. And then you take your gua sha tool and you pull down and drain out of your neck. It's gonna make you feel so less puffy, so less bloated, and I already aged myself before, but in my 30s right now, like I want to do that and not have to do it without getting any work done. It's really just gonna help you, and I'm a big skincare girly, so if I can help you guys out at all, the men, the women listening, get yourselves a gua sha. They're inexpensive, and it's gonna help your skincare routine. 4th topic, Taylor's topic, is going to be condiments. I am super into condiments right now. And I'm gonna show you guys a little video if you're watching as well of all the condiments that exist in my fridge with me and my best friend that live at home together. I'm obsessed with them. Anytime I see something that looks like it might be good at the store, I've gotta get it. I grew up in the Midwest. Ranch is a food group for me. That's going on fries, that's going on pizza, that's going on chicken, that's going on sandwiches, it's going on everything that you can think of. But I love me some relish, I love me some mustard. My new obsession lately has been honey mustard. That's been an acquired taste for me as an adult. I was never a big mustard gal until recently, but condiments, buying all the condiments, trying all the condiments, we're into new condiments. That is the end of episode 1 of first base. Thank you guys for coming with me on that journey, getting down that base path and going to first base with me. Hope you guys got to know me a little bit more, and stay tuned for our next episode. I've got a super exciting guest from Major League Baseball that's going to be joining us, be coming out next week, so stay tuned. Please like and subscribe if you're watching this video on YouTube, or listen on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for teaming up with me and coming on first base.